Welcome back, ballroom dance friends. Today is a part 2 of a little mini series I'm doing on the differences between coaching styles around the world. As you may know, I have had the privilege of taking from many ballroom dance coaches, many U.S. champions, many U.S. finalists, many world finalists, many world champions from different continents. And over the years, I have noticed some trends in the way coaches from different countries teach ballroom dancing. If you missed my last video, I went into the difference. I see what kind of makes the the British coaches teach a little bit differently than the other nationalities. And I also dove into, in my observation, how the American kind of culture teaches ballroom dance to its students. So the next country I want to dive into is Italy. And I've had the privilege of taking from many Italian coaches. So let's dive in. Maybe it's just the particular individual coaches that I have taken from Italy. But they, compared to the other countries in the world, give less detail about technique, and they describe things hardly ever using words, meaning, oh, you do this figure by putting this foot behind this foot, or you have a left side lead, you have CBM, etc., like I have seen from any other country. But they use a lot of, this will sound crazy, weird sound effects. And so when they're trying to teach, say, Gianni Dioria gave us some tango choreo, and he didn't even give us a single name for what he came up with. But the whole thing was like, yeah, da, 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 da. Like, I felt like the man was singing to me in gibberish for the entire lesson. Amazing lesson. I'm not throwing shade. I received many compliments over the wall he gave us over the years from many different coaches. But I gotta tell you, it's a little weird. Secondly, they talk a lot compared to any other country. They might even be the only country that really focuses on this. They describe patterns and movement, and they always say, it feels like this. It should feel like this. And they talk about a lot about the feeling. But you know what? I'm not in your body. I have no clue what it feels like, or I'd be doing it that way. So I really wondered about this. Firstly, I do find for some students, this approach works like magic, and they understand it. They learn it fastest this way. For me, it's a little more challenging, but mercifully, all of them have, they're not the type of coaches that sit and just talk at you for an hour. That really doesn't work for me at all. I can take a bajillion hours and I'm just not going to get anything out of that. But they are willing to dance it with both lead and follow. So I can kind of glean the feeling that they are talking about when I move with them. I've also wondered, perhaps, and you know what, if you are a student who speaks Italian, or even better, lives in Italy and is taken from a lot of these coaches, the Catarinas Argentans, the Massimos, Alicias, etc. of the world, perhaps there's just a language barrier. And I do think music, or dancing it with someone, or using sound effects, because these are tools that I use. They just aren't the first thing I go to, because those tend to speak in my experience, less to my students' soul in communicating the information than I use other methods of communication. And so I wondered perhaps if they just maybe don't speak English very well. I am broadcasting from the United States. That is my native language. So perhaps they're just communicating this information because those are the only vehicles they have that they feel comfortable driving, so to speak. And I can say what speaks to that theory is Luca Barici does speak English very well, and he actually does do a great job describing things in very technical terms and using words, although maybe he just teaches more Americans, so he's used to maybe getting the best results from someone from my background that way. I'm not sure, but you tell me. I'd be really curious. Also, if you have taken from Italian coaches, please comment below. I'd be very eager to hear your experiences. I also find, they tend to count the music a ton, and same way in a very sing-songy way. So they're kind of using sound effects to communicate the movement. So for example, in waltz, instead of saying arrive on the one, like a British coach would say, or surge on the one, like an American coach would usually say, they'll instead sing along with you while you're dancing on 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So it's just very unique to that country in my experience. Okay, so next nationality we're going to hit here. And forgive me, I have not taken from many North mainland European coaches, though I absolutely have taken with some, probably more than most people. For example, Arūnas Basiukas, Glenn Weiss. There's a handful I have taken from, and I do find, regardless of, I'm not including England in this, British Isles is a whole different animal, but for I'll call it mainland Northern Europe, there are some commonalities I've noticed. So I'm talking about Germany, Denmark, Latvia, but I have taken with both leads and follows from many of those countries. Now, in my experience, they are incredibly technically oriented. They include mechanics. They include visuals. Other than Yeva Pauksena, I would say they don't dance with you as much as perhaps the other countries, but maybe that's an individual thing because I'm not talking about, say, 10 different coaches in my experience. So they do teach a lot less through feel, in my experience, than most coaches from most of the other countries. So if you do learn kinesthetically, meaning you must feel everything, maybe this might not be the best coaching options for you in terms of learning to your sweet spot. Of these, because of that, my favorite are from Latvia. And I've only taken from 2 Latvian coaches, but both incredible teachers. One lead, one follow. And really stellar and able to dance both the lead and follows part exceptionally well. This may be just because it happened to be these 2 people from that country. The personalities I have found from these countries compared to all the others are quite reserved. I don't think I've ever heard a mainland European coach raise their voice, for example, whereas the American coaches will just get very loud and animated when they see something they like. I see the British coaches get much more loud and animated when they're joking around, which they do tend to do. I see the Russians get loud and animated when they see something that they dislike. I've never heard one of them raise their voice from mainland Europe. So that's interestingly different. So quite soft-spoken. My only complaint, and again, this is a very personal experience, I have talked about previously on my channel different, I'll call it schools of thought, approaches to ballroom dancing. And not that either is bad or good, but they are often in conflict conflict with each other. Again, not in syllabus, everyone kind of agrees on that book, but in the championship level, even hearing conflicting heels and toes or foot angles, knee angles, when to power on the same exact figures when you take from, I'll say, this kind of camp of coaches that have a certain school of thought. I do find in my experience, the British and that mainland Europe are kind of two different camps. They certainly don't hate each other. In fact, there's many, mixed partnerships. But the information you learn from one might not necessarily be exactly complementary to what you learn from the other. When that happens, hey, just listen, do it this other, teacher's way. I often find people just have different body styles. And so it works for this, couple where they have a 1 foot height difference, and weighs 50 pounds less than this other couple, the way they do it. It's not every couple is going to be unique. So again, I'm not saying they're wrong. It's just something I have noticed in the coachings, and I wouldn't want you, my first couple times out of the chute, I heard these conflicts. I was like, oh, I've been wasting my money. I learned it wrong. And of course, with time, I've learned that no, first of all, there's not one exact perfect way to go about it for everyone. Our bodies are different. And sometimes, most of the time for me, in my body style, the British kind of approach has worked. Sometimes the Italian coach has worked. And for me, least often is that mainland European approach, with the exception of the two coaches I've tried and from Latvia, who really spoke to me in a way and taught things that were innovative, that I hadn't heard it presented that way, that I was able to, I feel, grow a ton and worth 10 times that private lesson price. Okay, guys, I have a couple more countries I want to dive into. I apologize. I always go over my 10-minute mark. On my Grandmaster Evil plan, one day I will keep these videos in a tight, 5 minutes. But I appreciate you hanging in with me this long. If you enjoy all things ballroom dance, hey, please subscribe to my channel. Also, I appreciate your comments. You have no idea. This makes it so much easier for me to provide content that might be of interest to you. If you like a video, I know that you want to hear more stuff like that. If I don't see a lot of likes, I really kind of ignore that type of topic going forward. So if today's kind of stuff was interesting to you, please hit that like button, or even better, put a comment in the comment section. So thank you so much. I cannot wait to see you in the morning. And I'm going to post one final video on this topic because I think it's kind of interesting. So guys, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Happy dancing. Bye, friends.